this live session with Manifold AI Learning. Now, the topic of this webinar is how to perform the end-to-end implementation of machine learning project in AWS. Now, when we think about implementation and especially the end-to-end, this is one of the very important aspect of any machine learning project. Now, this one skill can actually help you to actually perform, I'll say 10x times in the way that you're working right now. The reason because one of the common challenge that I've seen with the learners is they are having the ability to implement the machine learning lifecycle in the notebook environment, and they're not aware as how it actually done in a production environment. Now, there was a learner who was part of the Manifold AI learning community. So his name was Rajesh. So Rajesh was having an issue where he was very good in his algorithm, like knowledge of algorithm, and he was really good when it comes to answering the question. But one of the key area that he struggled was he couldn't grasp, okay, how exactly it is done in a production environment, and how do you realize the machine learning project to the business use case. Now, what we found is just like Rajesh, we've got other learners as well who are struggling with this area of implementing the machine learning projects into the production environment. Now, to solve this particular issue, to help the learners to grow in their career and help their career transition easy, so we have created this webinar session. Now, this webinar session will go in a sequential way, just like we follow in any of our boot camps. So I'll go in a sequential way. So it might take one session or it might take more than one session. But will my promise to you is you will get the deeper understanding as how it actually works and how you can implement the end-to-end machine learning project in AWS. So that's my promise to you guys. So with my promise, so let's proceed ahead in this learning journey. And also feel free to let me know your question as we go through in this learning journey. You can just go ahead and ask the question, folks, in case if you need any help, guys. Okay. So that's how we'll be doing it. So let's get started, guys. All right. So in this section, what we'll be dealing with is the SageMaker pipeline. Now, the question is that most of you would have is what exactly is this pipeline and how is it important from the machine learning project perspective? So let's start by understanding as what exactly is this pipeline. Now, a pipeline from the machine learning project perspective is it's the sequence of interconnected steps that will automate the entire process when it comes to transforming the raw data into the actionable insights into prediction. So think about what would happen in a typical machine learning project. So it all starts with what step? Yes, it all starts with data collection. You will collect the data. Now, once you collect the data, you would go ahead and perform some basic validation on this data set. Then overall, if I want to mention the step, you will perform the feature engineering. Now, once you perform the feature engineering, you will transform the data such that you have every data that you have got is in every data that you have got is in structured format. Now, once you perform the feature engineering in, maybe you will also go ahead and perform the data transformation depending on type of the data that you're dealing with. If you're dealing with the categorical data, you will apply the label encoder or the one hot encoder. If you're dealing with the continuous values, you would go ahead and apply the standard scaler. Then once the transformation is done, you will go ahead and apply the machine learning model, which is basically the activity of fit. Now, once the fit is done, you would then go ahead and generate the prediction. Now, once the prediction is done, once you are satisfied with the outcome that this model is giving you would then go ahead and perform the next step. That is maybe once the prediction is done, we'll say evaluation. Okay, once the evaluation is done, you will then go ahead and deploy the model to the production environment. So this is the sequence of steps that we generally follow whenever we are working in any machine learning project. Now, what happens if I change something in the data? What happens if I get a new data set? Well, if I get a new data set which has got the same set of features, then I'll have to do the same thing because the model that I have trained, it's on the basis of the data that I have got. If I get additional data, then I'll also have to again perform all these steps in a sequential manner. Now think about how you would do it in the notebook. So in your notebook, you will open your Jupyter Lab environment and you will start mentioning the code line by line. And if you want to do all this activity, you will execute all these steps like shift enter, shift enter, shift enter. You will keep on executing this step multiple times. So that is what you would be doing in the notebook environment. Now, can you observe the challenge that it is? Well, one of the key challenge if you're executing in a manual manner is it is error prone. It is error prone. Now, due to some error, let's say one cell is not executed, but the other cell got executed, then incidentally, if that step is because of the transformer, maybe the data transformation, you will be missing that step itself and you will not be able to observe it unless and until you pay the attention. So it is very difficult to track. Now, that and another thing is, if something changes in the data, you have to manually execute the steps in your notebook environment. So what is the solution? The solution is making use of the pipeline where I'm going to define a sequence of interconnected steps, which means I'm going to first mention that first I'll get the data. Once the data is with me, then I'll have a feature engineering step. Once the feature engineering is successful, then I'll perform the data transformation. Once I have the data transformed, then I'll perform the fit. Once I fit is complete, then I'll generate the prediction on the test data. We can have an evaluation. And after the evaluation, we can set a condition saying that if the model that I have got right now, if the evaluation outcome is greater than a certain threshold only, then only I want to deploy to the production environment. Else, I don't want to do anything. So building such series of interconnected steps is what we call it as the machine learning pipeline. As you can clearly see, this is one of the important aspects when you're working in any machine learning project. It's not just machine learning, even this is applicable even for your generative AI or the LLM projects. So when we talk about the pipeline from the machine learning standpoint, some of the key characteristics that we'll be able to observe in this pipeline is sequential processing, where the data would flow through the pipeline in a step-by-step manner, with each step performing a specific task. Now, here in this pipeline, we will have the step for data transformation, where we would go ahead and process the raw data that we have got and transform it in a format that is suitable for model training as well as the model inference. And with all these steps defined, we can also provide the automation. So this pipeline actually automates the repetitive task. So as a result of this, this will reduce the manual effort and the chances of error. Modularity. So when I say modularity here, we will define each of these steps and we will define the steps of the pipeline as a reusable component. So by creating it as a reusable component, we can actually like construct it in a way that is suitable for our project or the application that we are building. And another main aspect is the reproducibility. So these pipelines ensure the consistent results by capturing all the steps as well as their parameter. So this will facilitate the experiment replication. And one of the best part about this pipeline is once you define the pipeline that is a sequence of steps, you can also parameterize some values, which you can use it in triggering the execution of the multiple pipeline with different values and understand which is the one that is much suitable for the data that you're working with. So these are the key characteristics of any machine learning pipeline. Now, when we talk about the machine learning pipeline or a large language models pipeline, how does the overall steps would look like? So these are the steps that we would have while working with the machine learning projects or the LLM project. The first step is the data ingestion. Now, this step involves collection of data from various sources. It can be database, APIs, or file. And the second step is the data cleaning and data pre-processing. So this would involve handling the missing values, outliers, inconsistencies, and transforming the data into a suitable format so that we can use it for the model input. Then feature engineering, which is about selection, transformation, creation of relevant features that will improve the model performance, followed by the training step. Here at this point, we will fit a machine learning model for the given data set so that we can find the patterns in the data set. Now, this is followed by the model evaluation step. Now, here at this step of model evaluation, we will assess the model's performance using the various metrics, followed by the deployment. Here, when we say deployment, it's about usage of the trained machine learning model and make it available for use for the external system or the external application. So this is called as the model deployment step. And along with that, we also have a monitoring. So monitoring means regularly monitoring the model's performance in the production environment and take up the activity of retraining as and when it is required. So these are the common steps that we have in any machine learning project or the LLM project. So the question is, why do we require this? So first of all, by having this pipeline, we'll be able to improve the efficiency. So with this pipeline, we can automate the repetitive task, and this will save time and resources. And by building this pipeline, we can ensure the reproducibility. So as a result of this, we always get the consistent results. Even though we are experimenting with multiple parameter values, we can always get the consistent results, which makes it easier to track the experiment and share it with the others as well. And this is especially useful because it's not just the output in the notebook is going to matter. It has to perform in the same way in the production environment. So you should be able to get the model which has got the reproducibility capability and scalability. The pipelines can be designed to handle large data set as well as the complex model. So this will enable their use, especially in the real world application. And lastly, collaboration. The pipelines provide a structured framework when it comes to collaboration between the data scientists, engineers, and other stakeholders. So that's the reason that we require the pipeline in the production environment. Now, this is where the service of Amazon SageMaker comes into picture. Now, in this Amazon SageMaker, we've got a service that's called as the SageMaker pipeline. Now, this SageMaker pipeline helps us to construct these kind of complex pipeline for our machine learning project, which we can use it in our day-to-day production environment as well. That's the best part of this Amazon SageMaker. So now that you have an idea, so let's understand, let's formally understand what exactly is this Amazon SageMaker pipeline. Okay, so here, when we talk about this SageMaker pipeline, this SageMaker pipeline is a fully managed service for building, automating, and scaling the machine learning workflows. Okay, so this is a fully managed service. Now, what is a fully managed service? It is a service which is provided by AWS, where we don't have to worry about its infrastructure. The infrastructure and everything is managed by AWS. We can just use these services and pay as per the resources that we would use. So we don't have to worry about instantiating it, managing it, scaling up, scaling down. We don't have to worry about all those complex stuff. So that's what we call it as a fully managed service. And it's a fully managed service for building, automating, and scaling our machine learning workflows. That means I can define a workflow with multiple steps. We'll have the interconnected steps that will ensure that we are able to get all the benefits that we have defined for the pipeline. And the best part is this SageMaker pipeline enables a seamless integration of various steps in the machine learning process. And this SageMaker pipeline provides the visual interface for pipeline creation and management. And we'll be seeing it in our hands-on. So once we create the pipeline and once we provide it to the SageMaker service, we can actually visualize how each of these steps would look like. Okay, so that's the best part about this Amazon SageMaker pipeline. Now, there's a question over here about the recording. So, folks, just want to let you know this session is being recorded. And if you want to access the recording in future, it will be made available to you. So, it will be made available in the Manifold AI Learning site under this MLOps project live end-to-end workshop. So, I'm sharing the link over here. So, within 24 hours, the session's recording will be uploaded on the portal. And don't worry, you'll get an email as well once the recording is made available to you. So don't worry. So ensure that you are logged into this portal. So that's a prerequisite to receive the email notification from the team. Okay, so ensure that you log in, like just go to the site, sign up and access recording code for free. Just click on this button. So you'll get a notification if you're registered on this Manifold AI Learning site. Okay, so let's come back. So we have now understood about what exactly is this SageMaker pipeline. Now, what are the key features of this SageMaker pipeline? See, these are some of the key features of this Amazon SageMaker pipeline. First of all, directed acyclic graph, which is also called as DAG. So using these DAG, we can model the complex machine learning workflows with dependencies, and we can also have a parallel execution. That means we can define how the pipeline steps has to be executed, whether it should be done in parallel, whether it has to be done in a sequential way, or whether it has to be done based on the condition. So we have that capability right here. And we can define the pipeline as a reusable component, and we can share the steps for common machine learning tasks. Like for example, I can create a step for pre-processing, and I can use that step for pre-processing in multiple pipelines as per my requirement. And when it comes to SageMaker pipeline, there's a library of pre-built steps as well that is available inside the SageMaker. That means when we are getting started with AWS SageMaker, it's much easier for us. Even if we do not have anything, we can actually make use of the various libraries that we have provided and various code resources that are provided by AWS. We can use it as a template and start using it for our project. So that's an easy way to get started with the SageMaker pipeline. And the best part is we can also monitor the experiments and compare the results for different pipeline runs in the GUI format. And this is made available to us in the SageMaker service. And finally, once the pipeline has been executed, and once we have the model which is working as per our requirement, we can store and manage these trained models inside another service that's called as SageMaker Model Registry. Now, the SageMaker Model Registry is a service that is provided by AWS where we can store the model, we can maintain the versions, and we can approve the latest version, and we can automate the step. So we'll talk about this model registry and its usage as we proceed in this hands-on project. So these are the key features of our SageMaker pipeline. Now, here you now have the basic idea as what exactly is the SageMaker pipeline and how it actually works and the importance of the same. Now, to get a better understanding on this, so what we will do is let's take up the hands-on journey as how to work with this Amazon SageMaker, how we can create the pipeline, and how you can actually construct this pipeline and execute this pipeline and track everything as what I have described theoretically. So in order to perform this hands-on, you need to have an AWS account as well as you should have the access to the SageMaker service. And whatever that I'll be doing, I'll be launching it inside my AWS account, and I'll be launching my own domain, and inside the domain will access the various services. And I'll tell you each and every step that I'll be performing in this hands-on. Okay. Now, overall, in this hands-on, these are the steps that we'll be performing. As I mentioned, it's an end-to-end. So first, we'll start by creating the complete pipeline for our MLOps. So we'll take up a project, like we'll take up a task, and using that task, we'll add the various steps to it. We'll add the pre-processing step, we'll add the training step, we'll add the evaluation step. We'll also add a condition step. Then once everything is done, I'll also add one other step that's called as registering the model in the SageMaker model registry. And we'll automate the deployment aspect using the SageMaker project. So this involves, I'll say, basic to advanced level concepts that I'll be showing you in this hands-on. So let's start coding, guys. So I'm going to launch my AWS. So give me 1 second. I'm logging in from my other screen. So if you're someone who's launching the SageMaker for the first time, so what you need to do is you have to first create the domain, go to the domain on the left-hand side, and domain is actually an environment where you and your team is going to access the SageMaker resources. So creation of the domain is a prerequisite. So you'll click on create domain, and there are various ways of setting up. So if you're starting out for learning, just use the setup for single user and click on the setup button, and this is going to create the domain. Okay, it will take a while for the domain to be created. And once the domain has been created, you can launch the application. So currently it is setting up. Okay, so I'll show you. Okay, so currently it is in pending status. So once it's available, it will show the status as in service. So I'll open the domain, which I have already created. Now, once you go inside this domain, click on the user profile. And from this user profile, you will see a default user profile already aside defined for you once you create the default domain. So over here, click on launch button and select the option of SageMaker Studio. So this is going to launch the Amazon SageMaker Studio service for us. And this is where we'll be doing a lot of activities for this hands-on. So this is the homepage that you would see. This is a new version of the SageMaker Studio, and we have various capabilities that are available to us. We have Jupyter Lab. This is what we'll be using it for working with the Python code environment. Then we have R Studio. If you're someone who wants to work with R programming language, you can actually make use of this R Studio. You have the code editor, and you also have a Studio Classic. This is the old version of SageMaker Studio. And there is an integrated MLflow service that is also available from the AWS. You can make use of this MLflow inside this Amazon SageMaker. You also have a canvas. Now, using this canvas, you can actually make use of visual interface and perform the end-to-end training of the machine learning model. Now, apart from these application, we also have some other important abilities inside the SageMaker Studio. If I expand this data, you can see there are various options such as data wrangler, which you can use it to aggregate as well as prepare the data. You have the feature store. Using this, you will store and share the features. We have the EMR cluster in case if you are requiring the compute clusters for the batch work, that's when you would be using. And we have an AutoML, which is also called as the SageMaker Autopilot, where you will just provide the data and you will make use of this automatic service to perform the training and let us know the insights about the data. And we have experiment. Now, experiment is a place where we can manage and track the experiments that we have conducted inside the SageMaker. So whenever we are doing any experiment with our notebook, we can log those experiments over here. This is especially for the MLflow experiment. Then here we have the jobs. So there are various kinds of job. One job is inference optimization. So if you want to optimize the deployed model and look into the same like about the inference optimization, we can actually look into this service of inference optimization. And under the training, we can actually view the various training jobs that you have executed. Then we have a model evaluation. So this describes the model evaluation job that has been executed so far through the batch job. And performance evaluation refers to the performance evaluation that we have conducted so far, which includes the model latency as well as its throughput. Okay, then the important one is the pipeline. So this is called as the SageMaker pipeline, where what you're going to see is something in this manner. We'll be creating the pipeline that would look something like this. So as you can clearly see, each node over here describes a step. So first step is a pre-processing step, followed by the training, evaluation. We will check a condition. Based on this condition, if it is satisfied, I'm going to create a model and I'm going to save it inside the SageMaker model registry. So this is what we are going to achieve in this hands-on. So we have this pipeline, and the best part is, as I've described earlier, the pipeline allows us to execute with various parameter value. If I choose this pipeline and click on this create button, which is about creation of the execution, whatever the parameters that I have enabled, for example, the input data. Currently, the input data is being consumed from one of my S3 bucket. Now, if there is a change in the data location, I can just mention the new data set, okay, new data set location, and I can click on this create. Now, this is going to execute that pipeline from that new location by picking up these parameters. Now, this is just the illustration of what you can do. Now, you can extend the number of parameters and use it as per your requirement. Okay, so this is about the execution options that you see right here. And if you click on graph, graph is basically describes as the various node that we have created. Okay, we can check and we can visualize everything. So if you click on this parameter, these are the parameters that we have enabled for this pipeline. And if you click on this information, it basically displays the overall information and the roles that has been assigned over here. There's also a model. So if I click on this model, this basically describes the SageMaker model registry. So whatever the models that we would create, we can create it under this SageMaker model collection, like model registry collection. And inside that collection, we can create the model groups. And inside the groups, we can have various versions of the model. So we'll talk more as we progress in the deployment aspect. Then we also have a Jumpstart. Now the Jumpstart is a service inside the SageMaker where we can make use of already pre-trained models. We can directly use this Jumpstart models and use it in our application. And we also have a deployments. So under this deployment, we have the endpoint where we can manage the endpoints that we have created, or we can also work with the SageMaker projects. So I'll be taking you this advanced aspect as well once we complete the pipeline. So this is the high-level introduction to our SageMaker Studio. All right, guys. So now that this is clear, so let's move on to the next step. That is, how do we actually construct the pipeline? So let's go and do the same. So in order to work with this SageMaker pipeline, so I'll be showing you in a code manner. So I'm going to launch my Jupyter Lab. And whenever you want to work with the Jupyter Lab, it is always started by creating the space. So I'll click on this button that says as create Jupyter Lab space. You just have to name the space. In my case, I'm going to mention as end-to-end demo. So just mention any name that you want to create and click on this create space. Now during the creation, so you can choose the instance, you can choose the image and the storage as well. Like for the demonstration purpose, I'll just change the storage to 10 GB. Okay, the minimum is 5 GB that is going to be provided. I've just changed it to 10 GB. Now I'll click on this run space. Now when I click on this run space, this is going to launch a new Jupyter Lab environment for us. Now on this new Jupyter Lab environment, we can start the coding, and the compute is basically ml.t3.pdm. So this is the compute that will be used in the backend. So I'll take a pause here, guys. So are you with me so far? If you're with me so far, please confirm by typing in as all good. Or if you've got any question, please feel free to let me know. Okay, so there are some questions right here. Tarun says, can we do data cleaning and SageMaker? Yes, we can do that. I'll be showing you in the demo. And Shesh Good says that how much does it cost? I mean, suppose we launch. Okay, so I'll take you through the pricing. I'll take you through my cost explorer, and I'll show you how much it has costed so that you'll get a rough idea as if you're executing at your end, how much you can expect. I think most of them you should be covered from the free tier, but I'll show you from my billing dashboard. So that will give you a good perspective as how much the charges that you can expect. And I'll also show you the closing steps as well. So when I say closing step, I'll show you as uh, like how we can like how we can stop the resources to avoid the billing. Okay. Now, any other questions, team? And few questions that I see here is Nikhil says AWS SageMaker to launch SageMaker Studio, we need to create a domain. To use the notebook, we do not need a domain. I think we need the same. Uh, like, are you talking specifically to like the which one are you referring to? Are you referring to the notebooks here? Yeah, that's correct. So if you're working with the notebook instance, I think it's not required. You can launch it and you can work with the SageMaker notebook. So in our case, it is recommended to have work inside the studio because we are looking at the overall process. We want to create the pipeline and we want to see everything in this interface since we are using the setup. And Sheshkut says how to terminate the instances. Definitely Sheshkut will perform the cleanup activity before we end the session. That's correct, Nikhil. So Nikhil says we just need to create the IAM role. That's correct. Okay. So Victor says, how much does it cost? So be with me. I'll show you. I'll show you my cost dashboard about what are the resources that I've used. So just take a look at it. I'm using the T3.medium. So this T3.medium you'll be getting for free for 2 months. Okay, the SageMaker. So this won't be charged for you. In my case, I'm in paid account, so I'll be getting charged. But in your free tier, you'll be getting this like services, the T3.medium for free. So you'll not be charged. And then you'll also have a lot of aspects in the free tier. I'll talk about the pricing at a later. Okay, Sujit says in real life, do we use AWS CDK or any IAC code to build the SageMaker infra? So for the like whatever the one that we are creating right now, so we are going to use it in the same way, that is domain creation, everything manually, because we'll have more control. You'll just create the domain once and you'll add the team members. Now the other resources will definitely make use of the cloud formation at that time. Okay, guys. So now that I have answered most of the questions that I've got right here, now let's proceed ahead in this learning journey. So we have this Jupyter Lab setup. All right, so I'll launch this Jupyter Lab. So this is going to launch a Jupyter Lab environment for us. So I'll take you through each and every step in detail. Now, if you have got any question, please feel free to let me know. So let's wait. All right. So here in this Jupyter Lab environment, I'm going to launch a new notebook, which is my Python 3 kernel, and I'll rename this file as pipeline demo SageMaker. So I would start by loading the necessary libraries. Now there are some syntax which is specific to the AWS. I'm going to answer as and when we progress. So to start with, I'll make use of Boto3, which is the Python SDK to work with AWS services. I'll import the SageMaker itself. So the model, everything is part of the SageMaker library. So I'm going to import the SageMaker. Then I'll import the SageMaker.session. Okay, so we use this SageMaker.session to create a session instance. Then in order to work with pipeline, so we'll have to create an object of pipeline session. Now this pipeline session is available inside this SageMaker.workflow.pipeline underscore context. So under this pipeline context, so we have something called as the pipeline session. Okay, I'm going to import this pipeline session. Now, once I've done the import, so I'll create the variables which we'll be using a lot. First of all, we'll be requiring the region. So to get the region, I'm going to make use of this Boto3 module. From this, I'm going to call this session. And over here, I'll access the attribute of region name. Okay, so this will get the region where this notebook is currently being executed. I'm going to instantiate the SageMaker session variable. This is important for me to create the pipeline and everything. So for this, I'm going to say SageMaker.session and I'll call session. So this is going to instantiate my SageMaker session. Now, once this SageMaker session has been instantiated, we'll also have to specify the execution role. So to get the execution role, I'll say SageMaker dot get execution role. So this is going to get the execution role that is associated with this notebook instance. And each and every project or each and every like SageMaker notebook that we would create or the domain that we will create, it will automatically access the S3 bucket. So in my case, I'm going to access the default S3 bucket. I'm not going to use any custom S3 bucket. I'll make use of the default bucket that I would get from the SageMaker. Now in your project, if you're having a specific bucket where you're saving everything, not a default bucket, ensure you mention that S3 bucket name over here. In my case, I'm going to access the default S3 bucket, which I would get from the SageMaker session dot default bucket. I'll call this function, and this would help me to get the default bucket that is associated with the SageMaker session. Then, as I mentioned, I'll create an object for pipeline session, and I'll call this pipeline session in this manner. Now, apart from that, okay, so what I'll be doing is, as I mentioned in the previous slide, at the end, we are going to register the model for our package, like model package inside this SageMaker model registry. So I'm going to define that package name as well. I'm going to say model package group name. I'm going to mention as end-to-end package. Okay, this is what I would specify for my package group name. I'll mention it in this way. Okay, this is how I'll be specifying this end-to-end package. That's our package group name. Now, once this is done, okay, so as I mentioned, in our hands-on, I would go ahead and create the steps for pre-processing, training, evaluation, will perform the condition evaluation, then followed by model registration. So these are the steps that we would have inside our pipeline. So let's go ahead and work with the same. Now, in this scenario, okay, in this scenario, so the first step that we are going to do is we will go ahead and download the data set. So here in this scenario, I'll make use of a data set that's called as the abalone data set, which is from UCI machine learning. So if I take you to the data set page, so this is the data set page from UCI machine learning repository, which is called as an abalone data set, where we want to predict the age of abalone from the physical measurement. So here, when in this case of abalone, okay, this since we are predicting the age, so this comes under the task of regression. So basically, we are performing the task of regression. Now here in this case, we have various features. We've got gender, length, diameter, height, whole weight, and so on. These are all the features. And we also have the target column, that is the ring. So this is how our overall data set would look like. You can refer to this page for complete information about the data set that we are going to use. Now, this data set is also available as a default data set for us inside the Amazon default S3 bucket. So we can access the S3 bucket, like default S3 bucket from AWS, and we can access the data set directly from there instead of we downloading it from the UCI machine learning repository. So in order to download the data set, first thing that I'll do is I'll create a new folder. So I'll use the mkdir code, like that's the command that I would use to create a new directory called data. And I'll specify my local path where I'm going to save the data is data slash, I'll say abalone dataset.csv. So this is where my local path will be. Then I would go ahead and create the S3 bucket. So I'll say boto3 dot resource. Okay, I'll not create it. Basically, what I'll do is I'll create an S3 bucket object and then we will download it. So I'll say S3 dot bucket, and over here I will uh, get the data from the S3 bucket, which is actually known as SageMaker service catalog. That's the S3 bucket. And over here, there's a service catalog seed code. That's what we would specify. And it is available for each region. So hence I'll mention my region code right here. Okay. So this is the S3 bucket and I want to download the data. So hence I'll call this function of download file. And what is it that I want to download? I want to download the dataset slash abalone dataset.csv. So this is the file that I want to download. And where exactly that I want to download it? I want to download it to my local path. I'll execute this. So if I refresh it, there's a data folder created. And if I go inside this data folder, the abalone dataset CSV file has been downloaded from the S3 bucket. So if you do not have it over here, so I'll be sharing you this data separately in case if you're having an issue at a later point, you can also load it locally as well. You don't have to download it from the S3 bucket. But this is the exact data that I'm using. Now, where exactly will I be storing this data set? So I'll start by defining my URI. Base URI is basically nothing but where exactly that will be storing everything for this hands-on. So I'll create a location. Like what I'll do is I'll say in my default S3 bucket. So this is my default bucket. In my default S3 bucket, I'll create a folder that I'll call it as AWS MLOps. Okay, that's a folder that I would create inside my default S3 bucket. And this is where I'll be placing all the data, all the saved model, like process data, everything that I'll be saving right here. Okay, now before I do that, let me just take you to my default bucket. See, the default bucket that is associated with my account is the SageMaker US East 1 86682. So if I go to this S3, which is one of the storage service that we have got in AWS, so this would basically tell me what are the S3 bucket that I've got. And right now, so I do not have any folder called AWS MLOps. There are some folders, but not there is a folder called as AWS MLOps SageMaker, but not the folder which says as AWS-MLOps. I'll add one more, I'll say live, so that we can ensure that once it is created and once we push the data, we'll be able to access it. So this is my base URI. Inside this folder of AWS MLOps Live, I'm going to transfer the file that I have got in my local path into this S3 bucket. In order to do that, I'll mention it in this way. So if I want to upload the data, I'm going to say sagemaker.s3.s3 uploader. Okay, this is the class that I would use. And here I would call a function of upload, and we'll have to specify our local path. Okay, see, it says local path. So I'm going to say local path is equal to local path, that variable that I have created earlier. Then where is my desired S3 URI? It's basically my base URI. This is the folder that I want to push. Okay, now this is going to return the output, which is basically the complete location of my file. So I'll be saving it inside a variable called input data URI. So this is the confirmation will be returned. So I'm going to save it inside this variable of input data URI. Now I'm just going to print this input data URI. So for your reference. So if I execute this, this has uploaded this abalone dataset.csv file from my local system to this S3 bucket. So let's validate it. I'll go to my S3 bucket. I'll refresh it. AWS MLOps Live, the folder has been created. If I go inside this folder, abalone dataset.csv. So we have downloaded the dataset for us. Okay, this is the first step that we have done. Now, apart from that, I'll also download one more thing, guys, from this S3 bucket. So we will also download a second data set for the batch transformation. Now, this is what I'll be using after the model has been created. So I'll download one more data set. I'll just copy what I have mentioned earlier. So this is going to download second data set for batch transformation. Okay, now here I'll mention the file name as abalone dataset batch. Okay, this is the new file that I'm going to download it into my data folder locally. I'll download it from the same region. So the name, it's actually abalone dataset batch. And I want to save it to my local path. Then I would go ahead and use my uh, like base URI. I'll use the same base URI. I'll just copy this and I'll show it to you. Okay, base URI. And I'll say instead of input data URI, this time I'm going to call it as batch data URI. And I'm going to upload the file that I have in my local path, that is this file right now, to my base URI. And I'm going to display this batch data URI. So if I execute this, the file has been loaded first. Let me refresh this folder. See, abalone dataset batch.csv, this file has been downloaded right now. And this file should be uploaded to my S3 bucket. So if I refresh my S3 bucket, see, a new file has been pushed to this S3 bucket. So we have downloaded the data from our default S3 bucket, and then we have pushed it to one of the S3 bucket. Now, the reason that we do it because whenever we want to perform the training using the SageMaker models, so for for the folder path, we'll generally mention where exactly the data set is present. So we'll like for performing the training, I'll be showing you at a later as well. So we'll have to specify which is the data that we have to use. So generally we pass in the S3 location. So because of that, as a prerequisite, I've prepared the data ready for us. Next, what would be the next step? The next step is definition of pipeline parameters. So this is what the next step is all about. So how do we define the pipeline parameters? So in order to define the pipeline parameters, so we have something called as SageMaker workflow parameter. So I'm going to show you in this way from SageMaker.workflow.parameters. Here, I can import various types of parameter as per my requirement. If I want to create the parameter which is Boolean, I'll say parameter, I'll import the parameter Boolean. If I want to instantiate which is float, I'll import the parameter float. If I want to instantiate the integer, I'll create it as an integer. So in my case, I'll import the parameter integer, and I'll also import the parameter string. So these are the two different types, data types that I'll be using it for definition of my parameters. Okay, now in our case, the parameters that I would be using are basically processing instance count. So this is one I'll be using, processing instance count, which basically describes the number of instances that I want to use it for my processing job, the input data location, and the batch data location. I'll call it as a batch data, and model approval status. So what should be the model approval status? So to begin with, I'll be setting the model approval status to approval pending. Then we can modify the status to the success or approved. Then we can actually trigger the overall pipeline, and we can look into the automation deployment at that point. Okay, so these are the parameters that we'll be using it. So let me start by defining these parameters. So the processing instance count. So this will be an integer. So I'm going to say parameter integer. And here for this parameter integer, I'll have to define the name. What is the name that I'll mention? I'm going to mention the name of processing instance count. Then I'll also set the default value. So I'll say default value is equal to 1. So how is it used? Well, I'll take you through the pipeline that I've already created so that you get a visualization. So if you go to a pipeline, if you look into the create, like a creation of the execution of this pipeline, the processing instance count, here I can change the integer value. This is the string. This is the input data. This is the batch data. So these are all the parameters that I'm going to specify. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Default value is 1. And in the same way, I'll go ahead and I'll use this model approval status. Okay, so this I'll be creating it as a parameter string. And here for the name, I'm going to mention as model approval status. For the default value, I'm going to assign the default value as pending manual approval. Okay, in the same way, I'll be creating the others as well. Like the other one is the input data and the batch data. Okay, so one I'll be creating it for input data. For input data, parameter string. So name I'll mention as input data. For the default value, I'm going to set it equal to input data URI. Then for the batch data, parameter string. For the name, I'll say batch data. And for the default value, I'll mention as batch data URI. So this is what I would create as a parameter for the batch data. So we have defined the parameters which we will be using it for our pipeline. Now, what are the next steps? So we have got the parameters ready, that is ready for our application. The next step is basically uh, what we call it as defining the processing step. Here, we are going to define the processing step in order to perform the feature engineering. Now, when I say processing step, I'll load the data, I can drop the columns, I'll perform the transformation on the given data set, and we will work on this data set. So that's what we'll be doing. Now here, in order to perform this processing, I'll be making use of the SageMaker processing. So I'll make use of the SageMaker processing. I'll show you. Uh, yeah. So we can make use of the SageMaker sklearn processing that we have got, where I'll be using this sklearn processor. And using this sklearn processor, I'll be providing my Python code where this processor can be created, and this will be used in order to perform the pre-processing. So this is what we'll be using it for our processing step. All right, guys. So now that we are top of the hour, so we can continue our learning journey in the next session. So we'll meet on the same session next week at the same time. We'll continue further in this learning journey. So what we have done so far is, so in today's session, we have actually imported the necessary libraries, understood the basics of the SageMaker pipeline, downloaded the data set, and we have prepared the data, like downloaded the data set, uploaded to our S3 bucket, and we have created the parameters. So this is what we have done so far. Now I'm going to attach the notebook file along with the presentation that I've used into the link that I've shared earlier. Let me just take you to that link. So this is the link where this is the place where I'll be uploading all the resources which we have used in today's session, guys. Okay, and going further, it will also contain the future recordings as well. You can access it at a later point. I'm just sharing you over here. Okay, there are some questions that I see here on the like on a social media channel. So how to know where all the data sets are available and why we need batch data? Okay, let me answer that, Tarun. Okay, so this is where you can get all the resources from this webinar, guys. Okay, so so folks, if you have got any questions on the learning journey that we had so far, please let me know. Okay, so I also want to know from you guys. So were you able to follow along with me so far? So is it detailed enough for you? Because this is how I would normally teach in our boot camps as well. So I wanted to give you the same kind of experience because that has helped the Rajesh and as well as the thousands of learners from the boot camp. So I want to ensure that you are also able to follow along with me. Okay, Victor, Sujit, Nikhil. Okay, excellent, guys. Shrikant, Tarun, Vijay, Rakshita, uh, Shruti. Okay, perfect. Okay. So, folks, okay, so you have understood that. Okay, so understanding the SageMaker and working with it is a very essential step for working for a data scientist. Okay, so as you know, most of you know that I'm also an author with Manifold AI Learning. So if you allow me, I'll also share one of the course that I've got an opportunity to create with Manifold AI Learning, which is in line with the topics that we have seen. Now, this is for the learners who wants to take the learning journey to the next level. So is it okay if I show you that course, folks? I'll just show you. You can just see if it's in alignment with your learning goal. It's something you can check out at a later stage as well. Okay. So I see confirmations from most of you. Okay. So the I've with Manifold AI Learning, I've got an opportunity to create multiple courses, but one course which is in alignment with today's session is MLOps with AWS Bootcamp. So this is a course that I've got an opportunity with Manifold AI Learning. So this is for someone who wants to take the learning journey from scratch using the AWS. It includes the various topics such as the introduction to MLOps, the basics of MLOps, understanding the Linux. So most of the learners do not have the knowledge about Linux and how it works. So it includes the Linux, source code management, working with code build, code deploy, code pipeline, Docker containers, practical MLOps with SageMaker, feature engineering, feature store, training, tuning, deployment, usage of custom model, infrastructure as a code, step function, and also the SageMaker pipeline. Now, this contains an advanced activity in this project. So whatever the live session that we'll be having, so that will also be added to this course automatically. But this is the level in which that you will be diving deep in this learning journey with Manifold AI Learning. So do check out the same, guys. Now for the learners who are joined with us in today's webinar, there's a special coupon code that is shared by Manifold AI Learning team. That's webinar 10. So using this webinar 10, so you can actually avail 10% discount on the prices that you see on the Manifold AI Learning site. Okay, I see most of the learners are already texting me that you have already taken the course with Manifold AI Learning, especially this course. So I think thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you. I see Victor. Okay, I see Dheeraj, Shruti. Okay, thank you so much, guys. If you're already doing with us or learning from us over there, I'm glad that you are already part of the Manifold AI Learning community. That's amazing, guys. So yes, you will be like whatever the updates that we'll be making on our platform, you'll be getting those update in that in our marketplaces too. So when we talk about the difference, there's no difference from the learning or the learning experience. So like whatever the updates that we'll be making. So there are some cases where some live session updates that we'll be doing as part of the Manifold AI Learning community, it will be automatically added to our platform, and there will be a delay in some cases. Some videos of, let's say, the live session that you'll be joining, so you'll be getting the live session access directly from here. In the other marketplaces, you'll just have a recording option. That's all. There's no much difference from the learning experience team. Okay, so no difference from the learning perspective, Nikhil. So with our platform, you'll be getting the notification on when we conduct the live session like this. You'll be getting the alerts, and you can directly be part of this webinars. And if it is uploaded to our site, so in that case, like in the marketplaces, you'll have the recording. That's all, because we are not allowed to conduct the live session over there. You'll just have a recording over there. Okay. So this is about the course that we have at Manifold AI Learning team. So do check out if it is in alignment with your learning goal. And if you have got any questions from the learning discussion that we had, please feel free to let me know. So thank you so much, guys, for being so interactive so far in this learning journey. Okay, Victor has some question. So what's the difference between the input and batch data? What is the purpose of both data set? So we'll be using the input data for performing the training, and we are going to use the batch data during the inference. Like during the inference and evaluation, we'll be using that batch data. Next. So the question is, what are the pros and cons from using SageMaker uh, instead of a structured ECR and Lambda to deploy model? So when we think about ECR and Lambda, so it's basically the same. I like when I say same. So when we think about the SageMaker model, so all the SageMaker model that we would be having, it's basically from the ECR only. Okay, it is basically from the ECR only. And this, like, let's say if I perform the deployment, so we'll be deploying the endpoint using the ECR image that we have created from the SageMaker, and we'll be deploying to an endpoint. And even in this case, we can have a Lambda function. We can have a Lambda function to trigger to this endpoint from the SageMaker. Now, the difference between the SageMaker endpoint and the normal endpoint is the SageMaker endpoint has the additional flexibility such as auto scaling, and we can directly, with the help of a single command from the notebook interface, so we can go directly mention the deploy command, and we can specify what are the instance that we want to do it. So let the SageMaker take care of everything in the backend and deploy to an endpoint. But when we are taking the general ECR approach, so at that time, we will have to take care of the Docker file. We'll have to we'll have to mention where the code file is present, model file is present, everything that we have to take care of it and deploy the model. So that's the only difference. Okay. So any other questions, team? Okay, I see a question from Shruti. Sir, can you tell me more about the generative AI package at Manifold AI Learning? Sure, Shruti. So any other questions, guys? Okay. Before that, I think there was a question from Tarun. Tarun says, are we going to use which model, XGBoost? Yes, we are going to use the XGBoost model, Tarun. And the other questions that that I see from Tarun is data set. Okay, this is one of the data set that I got from the documentation page of AWS. So that is from there I got all this data set, Tarun. Okay, now coming back to the Shruti's question, can you tell me more about this generative AI? Okay. So, Shruti, I think as you mentioned, this generative AI is basically one of the package that we have at Manifold AI Learning, which contains more than 16 courses, like almost all the courses which are relevant for generative AI learning journey is part of this package, where learners once getting enrolled to this package, like since you are talking about once you get enrolled into this project, so you'll have the access to all the courses. Like when I say all the courses, like Python programming, Python for data science, if I want to tell you in the order, you'll have the machine learning AWS certification, mathematics for AI, like linear algebra, statistics, calculus, and the certification from NVIDIA Generative AI, and the AWS certification, which is an upcoming course. So Generative AI Bootcamp, LLM Ops Bootcamp, Deep Learning Mastery. And so like apart from that, any new course that gets launched in this Generative AI, so you'll be getting the access to this package for free. So it's like a one-time investment that you would be doing it for the lifetime access to the courses at Manifold AI Learning from the topic of generative AI. So Shruti says, is the voucher webinar 10 applicable? Yes, Shruti. Yeah, you can use the webinar 10 voucher to get 10% off even for this package too. And let me tell you guys, this voucher will be available until I close the webinar. So once we close the webinar, you'll not have the option to apply this webinar 10, like it would become invalid. So if you're someone who's thinking about it, so go ahead and make the purchase before I close the webinar. I'll be here on call for another 10 more minutes to help you. If someone is making a purchase, I can just answer any questions that you might have. But yeah, uh, just a quick reminder about this, guys. Okay, any other questions, team? Okay, Sandeep says, can you suggest me how can I deploy the large language model? Okay, so one easier way, like one way that I can recommend is, so if you're simply getting started, so you can start by building a very simple application. Maybe you can just, I think since you can just refer to this path, okay, that we have described earlier. So you can just build an application which is based on a very simple one. I recommend maybe making use of the ChatGPT API to get started. And using the ChatGPT, you can package it, so using the Python knowledge, and you can directly deploy it with a container application. So one application that I would recommend is the Kubernetes, because that will be a cloud neutral one. So you can use it on any of the cloud that we would have, and implement the CI/CD pipeline with GitHub Action. You can implement it. So if you're looking to fine tune it, yes, there are various fine tuning capabilities that are available. If you're thinking about fine tuning it, maybe use the cloud instances. And while performing the fine tuning, use the LoRa technique. So that would help you to reduce the model size and also get the most best possible outcome. Yeah, that's correct. You can maybe refer to this guide to follow the same. This is about the LLM ops deployment. Okay, now there are some questions about the how to perform the cleanup activity. Okay, so let me just show you the cleanup activity. See, in order to perform this cleanup, that is to avoid the billing, first stop the notebook instance that is running. Okay, once you stop this notebook instance, go back to your SageMaker service that we have got and head over to the domains. Okay, and over here in the domains, go ahead and remove the user profile. So you will see a user profile that is created. Click on this user profile and select this option of delete. So in my case, I think since I have the other instances running, sometimes it won't delete. Okay, you'll just create, you will stop all these things. You'll stop all the application. You will delete the user profile. Now, once you delete the user profile, go to the domain that you have created and then head over to the delete domain and click on this button. So ensure that you delete the username as well as deletion of the domain. So this will ensure that you will not be billed. So all the services will be stopped and there will not be any active services that are running. Okay. So this is how you will perform the cleanup step. Now, as I mentioned, I'll also show you the cost as well. Let me just take you to my billing dashboard. I'll take you through the cost. Okay. That will give you a fair idea as how does your uh, costing of the resources would look like. So if I take you to the cost, so under the SageMaker, see uh, for processing machine learning storage, it is zero point 0.1 per GB a month. Okay, that's how much you'll be charged. For the endpoint, I think I was working on some LLM ops projects, so that's the reason that you would see my charges little more, because I was making use of the volumes, and in some cases I was working with the complex application, which was for my different work. So that's the reason that you see my usage different. Like for example, for ml.t3.medium, I ran for 110 hours. Now, even though I'm in paid plan, I'm just charged with $5. Okay. So depending on the type of instance, like for some hosting, I have used ml.x large for a different project. I've been charged $11. Now for I use for LLM models deployment, I use g5.tx large. That's actually $1.5 per hosting. And that's the bill is $198. So depending on the instance that you would be using, you will be charged. So in this hands-on, we'll be keeping the, like we'll at the max I'll be using, like I'll at the max we'll be using this ML, or at the max maybe I might use this ml.x large. Okay, that's the max that you would see me using it. Now if you follow along with me and if you just stop the services, so you won't occur much of the charges even in the hands-on as well. Okay, any other questions, team? Okay, so folks, I'll be here for 2 more minutes and then we'll be closing the call. In case if you're having any questions, please feel free to let me know. So if you do not have, so ensure that you register on the Manifold AI Learning portal to get the details as like once a section recording is uploaded, you'll get the details directly from the website. Okay. So thank you so much again, everyone, for joining with me and asking some of the amazing questions. It was fun to interact with each and every one of you. And I'll see you next time, everyone. Take care. Thank you, Darshan. Thank you, Rakshita. Thank you, Dheeraj. Okay. Now I see some questions from, okay, thank you, Shrikant. And Harsh says, I'm working on a project that need to convert video to image snapshot, then perform analysis. So you can make use of OpenCV. For you can, I think there's a frame read something. So you can use it and just read the data and store those frames. If you want, you can just store it in a separate frame inside your S3 bucket or anywhere. So then on top of that, maybe you can apply the recognition. Okay, any other questions, team? So I see Diksha has registered for NVIDIA Generative AI certification. So thank you, Diksha, for registering with Manifold AI Learning. So uh, yeah, congratulations on making the purchase. And okay, I see a few more registration. I think I had missed it. So Shruti has purchased the Manifold AI Learning package. Okay, thank you, Shruti, for making that purchase. So I welcome you for the Manifold AI Learning community. I see Anand has made a purchase on this MLOps bootcamp. So thank you, Anand, for registering with us. And we look forward to seeing you. Okay. Oh, okay. Sure, Salman. Let me do one thing. So folks, on the social media, I'll be just stopping the live stream. So folks, thank you so much, whoever have joined through the social media. Now, for anyone who have got the question,